So ever since I started making YouTube videos, I wanted to build a setup like this where we could flick a single switch. All of the cameras are integrated. I can quickly showcase to you, the audience, as well, what we're talking about here with the overhead rig. And then we can do short explainer videos about the stuff that I'm building, integrate it into larger build projects, but also restart some of my older channels. So I've been collecting most of the gear that's going into the setup over the course of several years. I've actually been designing and modeling different versions of the concept for quite a long time as well. One of the nice things about modeling stuff out beforehand is that you can figure out where certain components are going to have to be placed. And then that way I 3D printed some of these little jigs. This allows me to draw out where I need to make some gaps in the setup so that the sit-stand legs can fall into place. And we don't have to do that when the entire setup is already put together. As I've mentioned before, I recently really enjoy building stuff with aluminium extrusions. It's really quite strong, and especially for a larger setup like this one, it turned out to be really useful and really straightforward to actually put it all together. So for the entire bottom segment of the desk, I'm using 45 by 45 aluminium extrusions, and we're using the T-slots here to slide in those sheets of OSB that I cut to size earlier. And these will just be compressed inside of the build itself. And of course, we're using these twist bolts, which lock into place as soon as you turn them. This is a really solid way of fastening everything together. You can definitely also order some L brackets which sit inside of the frame, but because we have the OSB slid into place in the T-slots over there, that wasn't possible, and I actually prefer this mounting method because it's a lot stronger. So there's a fair few reasons that I wanted to build a setup like this, and some of the main ones are that I have a lot of camera gear that I'd like to talk about, and I have this channel called Flatlander Optics which I use to make lens reviews on. And I actually want to cycle some of the gear that I might be able to acquire via that channel by talking about the stuff that I have right now back into this one so that we can also split up the channel. So this channel will be mainly build focused and we won't be talking about camera gear anymore. And then the other channel can just dedicate into the camera gear segment, but also how I use the camera gear to film the videos for this channel. And the reason I wanted to build a dedicated setup for this, like the one we're building right now, is because I have time constraints already by filming these videos on this channel, right? So I wouldn't want that channel to eat into the quality of this one. Of course, upon building the setup and actually figuring out what the best method is for making something like this, I would have changed the design entirely if I was going to do this again. But for me, this setup has turned out really quite nicely. The 45 by 90 aluminium extrusions here offer a lot of space inside of the build, and in this case I am actually using the L brackets to hold everything together, and this is so that we can actually place some sheets of melamine over the top as the main base work layer. The casters that I'm using for these ones are the black ones that I used for most of the setups over here. Initially I also considered putting some workbench casters on these so that we could properly lock down the setup as well. Just a note that I'll leave a link to all of the stuff I'm using in the description down below. And if you use those links, it really helps out the channel. Something else that really helps out the channel is checking out the Patreon page. I upload all of the designs that I make over on the Patreon page. You can download those and use them for yourself. And all of the proceeds go directly back into the channel, allowing me to make better videos. In total, I'm mounting about 8 of these casters. This is just so that we can distribute the weight and we don't have any pressure points on the floor. And one of the most important aspects to the setup is that it's very versatile. You can operate it in many different forms, and that's where the sit-stand legs also come into play. These are the E7Qs, not sponsored by FlexiSpot, but I do really enjoy these because it's 4 columns and all of them have the same mounting situation as all of the other FlexiSpot legs. So I have this 3D printed component that I place in between the wood and the sit-stand legs. Now if you don't have a 3D printer, it might be worth it to check out today's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay offers high-end manufacturing services ranging from PCB production and assembly, CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, injection molding, and of course also 3D printing. It's super simple. You just upload a file, you get an instant quote for what something is going to cost, and then you send it off to them to be 3D printed. It arrives in your mailbox a couple days later. You can do this in all kinds of awesome materials, and the print quality is going to be a lot higher than what you're able to do with your own printer. So I'll leave a link in the description down below. Special thanks to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. So I used one of the first sit-stand desks that I built to levitate the other desk above the sit-stand legs over here, squeezed them into place and then bolted them into place as well. And then I slid that entire top segment with the sit-stand legs implemented over the base layer. and these are also bolted into place, and all of the holes that we drew earlier with the 3D printed jigs actually lined up perfectly for this. Now, in terms of the mounting situation of the sit-stand legs, this wasn't the best solution because of mounting it onto the wood, and of course the wood is only 9mm thick, so it flexes quite a lot. And if I would have designed this in a different way where it actually connects to something that's a lot more solid, there might be a lot less wobble. When I'm just operating the setup normally, there's no real issue here. But when I start to push on it, of course we will see that there's quite a lot of wobble going on the frame over there. The overhead rig is fine though. I mean, you don't notice it when I'm pushing it like this, so totally workable. Of course, we also need some holes in here so that we can route the cables from the sit-stand legs into the build itself and then connect to the control box. This time around, I'll be mounting most of the power strips on the outside of the frame, and it will be a very utilitarian look. But for the control box of the FlexiSpot legs, I don't really need quick access to that, so mounting it inside of here is just fine. I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do with the middle column over here, so eventually I kind of panicked and just drilled a hole in this, but it would have been nice if I did this properly and made some kind of 3D print underneath the desk. It worked out fine. I was able to route the cables through that, and then I mounted the control panel over at the bottom over here, so it's on the right side of the desk. In the design phase, I already accounted for the top panels, which are 80cm in width. That's because the entire desk is 160cm wide and 220cm long. That means we can't cover this in a single sheet, so there will be a little bit of a rim in the middle there, which I don't really mind because this is the panel that we'll be working on, and then the other panels where all of the equipment will be on. So in that case, it's a nice divider in a sense. The outer ends of these melamine sheets don't have the veneer or melamine, whatever you call it, over there, so you will see a wood layer from the side of the setup. I don't really mind this at this point, but we could always make something to cover that up, like a aluminium strip that connects to the bottom over there. And this is where we'll go over to the overhead structure, which also holds all of the lighting equipment and audio equipment in place. I designed this around the reusability of the aluminium extrusions, so these are 120cm long. If this doesn't work out, which I don't suspect it won't, but if it doesn't work out, we can always reuse these pieces for a normal setup. And I go about it in this way quite often actually, because I know that sometimes you make a setup and in your head it sounds completely reasonable, but eventually you don't really use it, then you want to rebuild it into something different. So the video lights that we're using for this setup in particular are the SmallRig 220p Pro video lights. I still had these laying around, so they weren't really doing anything. These are actually quite nice because they have this V-mount battery plate at the back over here. That allows you to place a V-mount battery on there, operate at 70% power in situations where you don't actually have a power plug. But what I really like as well is this is the entire power brick, right? So you just have a cable connected to it instead of another separate power brick hanging from in the middle of the cable essentially. And that can sometimes be a little bit difficult to deal with as you can't hide it anywhere. For mounting these video lights, I'm using these pistol grips on this tube, which is 33mm thick, and in that way we can easily adjust the lighting situation as well by simply squeezing the handle and moving it up and down. You can also really easily mount this system on the other side of the setup if you would like the key light to come from a different direction. I have also considered using different video lights because these still make a decent amount of noise when they're on because of the cooling fan. So what we have going on is a key light, which is lighting me. And then we have a spotlight, which is lighting the background here for the overhead rig. And that just gives it some nice contrast between the background over here and the foreground. The entire setup, of course, offers quite a lot of versatility in terms of camera placement because we have these T-slots available pretty much everywhere. And that means that the camera situation that I have mounted right now and what you see in the talking head video is not the only solution, right? You can have it be off angle, you can have it be from the table up, you can have one angle which is a lot higher, for example, but in my case I like it like I have it right now. So that's the straight on camera angle over here, and it has a display right underneath it so that I can actually see what I'm doing and what the shot looks like. I did have to shorten this segment a little bit because it was eating into the frame at the bottom over there, but after that was all fixed, it worked out really nicely. So as the setup is right now, it's pretty usable, but we only have the main input of the main camera on the monitor over there. And I would like to invest in some kind of HDMI switcher like a Blackmagic 8M ISO to actually get all of the inputs on there. And preferably have like 4 cameras on this setup so that we can create really interactive videos, let's say, with a very close-up camera, a side angle, main camera, and of course the overhead rig that we have over here. As for that side angle, I prototyped this with a Extrusion top rig S60. This is a motorized slider, and this one would be perfect for the setup because you can just lock in the rotation of it, and then that way when you start up the setup it will just start moving and everything should be in frame. But I think the footage will look a little bit too fancy, so I'm just opting to put a simple newer Z tilt on here, and that way it will be a stationary side angle. Audio is something I would normally spend a lot more money on because it's the most important, but what I find more important than really good audio quality is audio quality that consistently works. So this time around I actually wanted to have a very simple microphone that doesn't even have batteries in there. It's powered by the 3.5mm jack on the camera, and then that way I'll never have to think about charging it, and it's also already packaged with the HDMI signal. So if we go through a HDMI switcher, then everything is already lined up. I'm not even getting a longer 3.5mm jack to run it to the main camera. I'm just plugging it into the overhead camera over there just to de-risk myself from anything that could go wrong. I initially wanted to buy myself some cable gutters and then mount them onto the aluminium extrusion, so on the outside over here. I went on to Thingiverse and I found some of these 3D prints. And what you can do is just twist them into place, and this will allow the cable to go over the outside. So I modified that design a little bit and made it a little plug so we can actually allow the cables to go through the aluminium extrusion over here and then lock into place with these little things. Cable management on this one is really quite important because it's also not stationary. We're actually moving this thing around, it's on wheels, and if you ever snag a cable and ruin a port, that's going to be a really bad day. So there's still batteries in the main cameras and there's USB-C ports running to those cameras to provide power so we can record indefinitely. And then of course we would like to cycle those out and replace them with dummy batteries eventually when we have different camera gear for the main channel. Of course, there's still some upgrades left to do, but I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it gave you some inspiration, and hopefully see you in the next one.